Welcome to Next Play. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Next Play. We have a special guest, Gracie Kramer, former UCLA gymnast. Gracie, how are we doing?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, we're pumped to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored.
Well, we're big fans. We follow you. I know over the platforms you have about 1 million plus followers. So lots of people I think will connect to your story from your years at UCLA and what you continue to do. So we obviously talk to professional athletes like yourself about mindset and kind of the mental skills that they use, and gymnastics being top of the list for needing mental skills for sure. So before we get to that and kind of pick your brain on what you do, I want to, for those of you who don't know Gracie's incredible background, I'm going to run through it. And all athletes hate this, but I warned her to just hang in there. So yes, like Owen said, she was a part of the UCLA gymnastics team from 2016 to 2020. In 2018, she was NCAA team champion, 3-time All-American. That's so badass. It is. Scored a perfect 10 on the floor during the 2020 season. That was COVID, wasn't it?
COVID ended my career.
Oh, we're going to get to
Yeah,
that.
so literally like a month before COVID hit. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it was wild.
that's wild.
We'll be
That's
getting
wild.
into that. Don't
We'll be
you?
getting into that. Oh,
We'll
God,
be
yes.
getting into that.
Well, you got that perfect 10. That's pretty cool. 2-time All Pac-12 honoree on the floor, 2-time Pac-12 honorable mention All Academic. And you're also currently still flipping for a living, or your Instagram bio states. Where does that come from, by the way?
I don't know. I just kind of pulled it out of nowhere, and it's ever since.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what? I don't really know a lot of people that can say that they flip for a living. So it just kind of was like a fun little shtick. And it's been my thing ever since.
It's like a motto, right?
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I love it.
Catchphrase.
Yeah.
So I think starting off, I kind of want to ask, like, how has like your mentality and just mental toughness in general kind of like gotten you like where you are today?
I think for me, growing up, I had always been very, very passionate. I did struggle a lot with attention to detail and attention to kind of larger goals and having that in mind, because it was always just so fun for me. So I think as I got older and I got more dialed, and I obviously also, I feel like every athlete has it, but like I was able to identify like a pretty extreme case of ADHD. I realized kind of how to use it as like my superpower, and kind of use it as my like fire within to continue to light me up every practice and keep me accountable and keep me disciplined. And I don't know, I just really tapped into it, especially when it came down to like going to a school like UCLA, feeling like I wasn't as good as the girls I was on the same team with. I was on the same team as national champions, Olympic gymnasts, like top-notch athletes. And so walking on to the team and feeling very kind of in over my head, I had an option. It was either crumble under the pressure or kind of tap into this disciplinary mindset and come out on top. And thankfully, I have a pretty strong underdog mentality. I love when people underestimate me. So it was a really cool thing to kind of, just utilize in my back pocket and try to kind of keep in the back of my head every day at practice, like, hey, you have something to prove. Like, you aren't guaranteed on this team. Your spot isn't guaranteed. So just kind of having that chip on my shoulder every day really kept my mind sharp. But I
love
mean,
that. I love that.
That's awesome. I didn't know
really
there was
is.
I didn't know there was walk-ons for gymnastics. How does that work? Because obviously, like football, it's like a lot of like full scholarships. I don't know the recruiting world really for gymnasts. What's that like?
Yeah, so I was committed to Arizona State before on a full ride, and literally a week before I graduated high school, I decided to decommit, even though I signed a contract that I was going there. And they let me out of my contract because the head coach got fired. So thankfully there was a lot of movement going on, and they were just like, we'll release you, whatever. And the head coach at UCLA was like, hey, you can vault. Like, would you walk on? So I paid full tuition all 4 years and was a walk-on athlete. So a lot of the girls, it's different now. I think they're starting to shift into partial scholarships now with gymnastics. Like with baseball, it's like you get like a certain percentage. I know football is kind of all or nothing kind of thing, or they'll pay for like your books or whatever. But gymnastics was always all or nothing. And at UCLA specifically, you signed for 4 years. So girls, it was great for the girls that obviously deserved to have that security. But if they weren't doing their job, they would still have a guaranteed full 4-year scholarship. But at a lot of other schools, it's a 1 year and then you re-sign. So an athlete, if they're not providing that, expectation, they're not like meeting the expectations that they're supposed to. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a job. If you're not doing your job, they have the right to pull your scholarship. And that wasn't the case at UCLA. So I didn't have very many opportunities to earn a scholarship because there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. Like unless an athlete medically retired, you weren't going to get a chance at a scholarship because they only had 12. So there were like 22 girls on my team at the time. So
that's kind of cool though. Going in, like you kind of almost knew like you wouldn't be on scholarship essentially for like the 4 years.
Oh right? Yeah. I agreed to walking. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome though.
And so, I mean, at the end of the day too, it was like, you could also try to earn it. So there was also that motivation in the back of my head, like, okay, I'm competing and training to try to earn this scholarship at the end of the day. Like, and even though I didn't get the scholarship, like I got so many amazing things because of that motivation and because of that drive and that goal. So I'm not salty about it. Like it is what it is. It was, to me, especially with sports, it's like control your controllables. I couldn't control who got what scholarships. I couldn't control how much money I was paid, but thankfully I was in a financial situation where I could afford college and my family supported me enough to like, help me get through it. So I'm very fortunate in that way. But yeah, it was definitely one of those things I'm like, hey, like maybe I can earn a scholarship doing this. Like, who knows? But
you're a better person than me because I had coaches offer me walk-ons and I said I'm out. See ya. So, you're.
To be fair, I was a little like in an oh shit moment because I had a week before graduation. And I'm like, where the hell am I going to school?
Yeah, well, that's fair enough.
It was, and my dad, thankfully, he went to UCLA for med school. And so he sat me down and he's like, Grace, if you don't do that, go. And I'm like, UCLA would be kind of good to go for like academics, I guess. So that was
it's setting you up. Yeah, it's setting you up. I love what you were saying, going back to the underdog mentality. We see this with athletes. First of all, I think culturally we love the underdog. It's a great story. And there is something you can take with that, right? Like that mindset of prove them wrong. And the expectation, I think the benefit is the expectation is not there on the same level externally. Internally, it seems like you woke that up and you're like, I decided I'm going to commit to this. And I have that, like you said, in your control. So were you a late bloomer in general as a gymnast? Okay. So did this start young, this sort of, I guess, prove them wrong mentality that you had?
I was never the best one. And I think it was a good thing. I think it kept me really humble. I think it kept me very driven. I started gymnastics when I was 6. I literally got into it because someone gifted us a trampoline and I was chucking flips on it. My mom's like, okay, you're going to kill yourself. Let's put her in something. And so they put me in gym. And then I did progress quickly because I was ballsy. Like I would chuck skills very often, but the technique wasn't there because I didn't have the discipline or like the mental ability to like focus on one thing over and over and over again. I'm like, this is boring. Screw the technique. Like, let's get to the harder skills, keep punching it. And it caught up to me. Like,
I was just gonna say, when did fear catch you? Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I was like, it caught up to me, not even in fear, in the sense of like, just my gymnastics was kind of crappy. Like, it wasn't very good. It was just like, chuck it and hope for the best, kind of. So as I got older, I kind of paid the price of like, oh, I wish I paid attention to my foundation a little bit more back then. So when I got older, I did have to like kind of relearn the basics to make my harder skills easier. The peak age range is around like, it's just really wild. It's a weird range. It's like 12 to like 18 is when you're like thinking about like, okay, if I want to go to the Olympics, like this is the time, like I have to train around 10 years old. And so I was at a gym who was coaching Kyla Ross, Michaela Maroney, like all of these amazing Olympic gymnasts. And I had grown up with them in gym, and I never associated myself in that realm. Like I was never at that level, but they were like, it was these Chinese coaches. They were a married couple, and they were like, do you want to try? Like, would you want to be on that route? And now at that age, I'm like, sure, whatever, I'll try it. And I was training 9 hours a day, every day except one, I think every day except Sunday. And I was having lunch and dinner there. I saw my coaches and my teammates more than I saw my family. I never was at school. Like I was falling behind so badly in school because I was skipping out on classes. And then like on the weekends, I would make up for the curriculum I missed. And it was just like, I had no life. And I'm like 12. And I'm just like, okay, I don't even know what the hell I'm eating tomorrow, let alone what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I don't really want to like put all my eggs in one basket. So I took a step back. I did it for 2 years or like a year and a half. And I also just saw the way that it affected the other athletes. Like I saw my peers, like the Kylas, the Michaelas, like all these amazing gymnasts trying to go elite, which is like international Olympic route. And they looked miserable. And I saw, a good chunk of them crying every day. And I didn't want to sacrifice my passion for the sport that badly for a medal or for a accolade. I mean, like I have so much respect for Olympians, but that just wasn't my drive. My drive was always be better than who you were yesterday, not get this medal. Like I've never been accolade driven. So because I never was like top dog, I never was winning. So I never really knew, like, I don't know, it just didn't drive me the same way. Cause again, it's like control your controllables. I can't control whether or not a judge gives me a score. So why am I using that as my motivation? Like, it just seems silly in my brain. I'm not wired that way. So started falling in love with college gymnastics, was watching it literally every single day, watching it before every one of my meets for motivation and for just like getting my head right. And then,
awesome.
yeah. And I was just, I think I at age 12, I got my first college like brochure, and I was
That
like,
seems also insane to me.
That's insane. 12.
Like
Yeah.
12, I don't even, what was I even doing?
I
when
don't know.
12?
You were running around with like,
oh yeah. Like, again, like
I-
at 12, they're asking you what you want to major in. You're like, what's a major?
Yeah.
right.
No, it's insane.
It's
Well, you had a good balance though. I mean, you
Yeah.
had a good balance and focus
Yeah.
on the mental side of life, really, right?
Yeah.
And what
Thankfully-
motivated you and your parents,
Yeah.
it sounds like.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, thankfully, I am one of 4 kids, and so we all had our things going on. So it was like, yes, my sport required a ton of attention and a ton of money and help and like just energy. And thankfully, my mom was, able. She didn't have a job, so she was able to travel with me for meets and stuff and all of that. But like, I just loved that there wasn't all of this incredible pressure on me. Like, they were always able to like, delegate their attention to like the other kids, and my other siblings are athletic too. And well, they didn't do athletics. They're, they did their own things. My brother's a surfer, my little brother's a surfer and skater and whatever.
Well, that sounds fun. We're gonna have them next, and we're gonna see if
Yeah.
that's true, that they got attention.
Yeah. And
we believe you.
I think that, having that balance was really what kept me in the sport for as long as I did, because I had a lot of teammates who fizzled out. They burnt out so quick because their parents were way too involved.
Yes.
They cared way too much
It's the
about the sport.
worst.
Yeah. And like, at the end of the day, I'm so grateful because I would come home from practice, whether it was a great practice or a bad one. And I remember, especially on the bad ones, like I would come home crying because I cared so much about my sport. I cared so much about having a good day and like doing well. And if I had a shitty day, I'd come home, I'd be sobbing on the drive home to my mom, and every answer, didn't matter what it was about, didn't matter how many days I cried in a row, she would go, "You can quit." And I remember hearing that as a young athlete and just being like, what do you mean? Like, absolutely not. Like, I would never quit. I love this sport way too much. And it would just bring me back to gratitude. And I know that a lot of my other, past teammates in high school and in college, like they didn't have that. They didn't have their parents giving them an out. They didn't have them giving them an option. And I think that was really the key for like,
having, a beautiful response by give a huge shout out to your mom. As a psychotherapist, I don't see enough of that. I see a lot more of, the opposite, of adding, not on purpose. Parents are doing the best they can, but I love that that's how you, got feedback
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead,
gotta go back though. I gotta retrack. So
Yeah.
it sounded like your vibe was like you kind of just said F it before a new skill and like weren't really scared. Has that always been like your kind of
Yeah.
vibe?
I think I went through a long stretch of time where, yeah, I said F it, was chucking things. Everyone's like, who the hell is this little girl? She's this like little dynamite, power thing. And then honed in on my skills around junior, sophomore year of high school because I realized like, okay, I better lock it the F in.
But
because
did you ever have like say it's, I don't know like the terms for this, but like a crazy like scary skill, right?
Skill.
Fear?
Yeah. Yeah, like were you
Yeah.
ever like I'm not gonna like that, like I'm not trying that, like
Oh my God. I've had mental blocks, I've had fear, I've had
yeah.
everything you can think of. I mean, it's one of the most common things in gymnastics. Like, I wish people like other athletes understood it. It's very weird. It's kind of like the yips.
Yeah.
But there's fear involved. So it's not just like, oh, I can't physically do this because I'm like mentally getting stuck. It's like, no, your body's literally having a full-blown reaction to a skill and you cannot go through with it. And like it's so gnarly. Like these girls will have like full-blown panic attacks over certain skills. Like I've had thankfully, I to this day I think I can count on like one hand how many mental blocks I've had. But I know girls who are scared of going backwards, period. Or
And
like,
how did you get through that? How do you
Yeah, I was
get
gonna
through
say,
that? Yeah.
what were like,
yeah,
how did you manage that? Was there anyone like specific person that kind of like was a big help for you, or is it like your own skills that you developed, or?
yeah, I think there were a lot of different things in different stages of my life. When I was younger, I remember doing a lot of visualization, doing a lot of journaling, talking to my coaches, doing a lot of privates. Because for me, a lot of what was going wrong was now looking back, like being educated and understanding myself better. I think a lot of it was just being overstimulated because I have very high, levels of ADHD issues. So I think that being in a busy gym, trying to hone in on my skills, trying to stay focused on what I needed to do to stay safe, I could not focus. And I had so much going on at all times, in my peripherals that I think it just kind of put me in a really bad state of like anxiousness. And gymnastics is super dangerous. And you see sometimes it's triggered by like you see your teammate eat shit and then you're like, oh my God, I have to do that now. And like I don't want to eat shit. And like you
Right.
could, like not even get hurt, but you still
Right.
are afraid of like the unknowns and all of that. So yeah, that was kind of a big one. But then as I got older, I actually had some weird mental blocks. It wasn't like a skill. It was actually the level of pressure that I felt from the crowd. So when I got to UCLA, this was actually a really weird way of like a weird segue, but this is how I got into doing floor. So I'm known in my sport for floor. And I came into UCLA not training floor. Like I trained it, but I wasn't expected to do it. I came in as a vaulter specialist. So I was known for vault. Obviously, I was still good at floor in high school, but I wasn't recruited for it because we had a kick-ass lineup on floor. So it was really hard to break into floor lineup. And so I was like, let me just focus on vault. So I do vault all of freshman year. I shit the bed. I did horrible. I like fell every other. I had so much going on in my head that I crumbled. And I realized, well, one, I got tested. That was the first time I like officially got tested for ADHD. And so they prescribed me ADHD meds my sophomore year, which helped a ton, especially with school. And I just realized like the expectation was killing me mentally it was killing my confidence. Like it wasn't during practice. I could do it during practice. The second I stepped out on the comp floor, I was surrounded by thousands of fans. I mean, UCLA back in the day was like popping. Like we were the second most followed program in all of women's sports on social media, second to women's soccer. And we had so many eyeballs on us that I think I just got really in my head over it. And they ended up taking me off the floor at nationals and they were just like, you're a liability. You can't compete. And I had to sit in the stands with my parents at nationals. And that was like the biggest wake up call I could have possibly asked for. Like, I'm very grateful for it. And, looking back, because I remember sitting in that seat with my parents, looking out on my team that I couldn't be with because I didn't control my controllables. I didn't take care of my mental health. And I was like, I'm never letting this happen again. So ended up kind of switching up my training, took a break from vault, did floor, fell in love with floor, started competing my sophomore year, broke into lineup, and I was the only girl, I think, on my entire team to compete for the entire season after season after season. Like, I competed every single meet straight.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
And then I sprinkled in some vault again, but I had to go to a sports psych because I literally could not calm myself when it came to being out on the floor.
So you
What
learned
was like,
skills.
yeah, what was the biggest skill though? Like, was it visualization, breath work? What would you say like was your best tool for like holy shit moment when you see the big crowd and you need to like calm yourself down?
Yeah. So some weird things that I actually did.
We love weird. Give it to us.
Yeah.
There in Santa Monica, there's this guy who's a sports hypnotist. And he literally works with, like, I think the LA Kings. And my mom found him. Don't know how. My mom's she's just that girl. And so I go to this guy and I'm like, what? This is like some, hippy dippy shit. Like, I'm a little skeptical, right?
Yeah.
And he has like this thick French accent. And he's like, he puts me in this big like recliner chair and like puts a blanket over me. And he's like, are you comfortable? And I'm like, yeah, this is so weird. And he was just like, I'm just going to talk you through kind of what, like, we had like a meeting where he would ask me, obviously, like, explain gymnastics to me, like, tell me kind of what you're struggling with and whatever, and like show me videos. And like, so basically he would take the videos, analyze them, study them, and then read it back to me essentially, and just be like, you're in, the arena, you're in Poly Pavilion. Like, he would use keywords that would trigger me, and he'd be like, but he would have me breathing and doing this 5-7-8 breath work, which is, if you don't know what 5-7-8 is, it's basically, I think it's 5-7-8.
I think it's 4-7-8.
4-7-8. 4-7-8.
Yeah.
Clearly haven't done it in a while.
It's okay.
Which honestly, thank God, that means I'm not as stressed as I used to be. But 4-7-8 is essentially the breathing technique that they studied because people were in comas, and that was the breath work that they had been doing. That was the breath pattern. And they realized that that's as calm as your body can possibly get without being dead. So they told me to do the 4-7-8. They taught me that. And then basically they would have me like, and I'm not even kidding, I was lucid dreaming. Like, I felt like I couldn't move. It was so trippy. And
sounds so weird.
Yeah. It was basically like guided visualization.
I was like, that's guided visualization, and it's creating neurons, right? It's creating neurons in your brain so that when you go to that experience, you have a different one because your brain's already done it, right?
Yes.
So it's like
an hour session like every week, and I was doing, and I fell in love with it. It changed my whole way of thinking about my mental game and just like my approach to gymnastics in general. But he would also record his sessions and then have me listen to it before bed every night. And every night I would knock out faster and faster. He was like, just so you know, like, the more don't listen to while you're driving, like shit like that. And I'm like, right. Okay, like, Harley. So that was number one. That really changed the game for me. Best investment I ever did. I always tell athletes, like, it's obviously hit or miss, but like, if you can find a good sports psych, just having guided visualization, having a different approach, different perspective on like your mental state, I think is so helpful. Especially in a sport like gymnastics where it's so mental. And then another weird thing was I chewed gum. They say that chewing gum for people with ADHD is really helpful because it helps kind of keep your body busy. Like, it's kind of like a fidget.
Oh, he loves it.
Yeah. Also severe ADHD. I think undiagnosed, but I had it as well.
Oh, chewing gum. People think I was a psychopath for that because I was literally chewing gum while I was vaulting. I would hold on to it like with my teeth. Like,
really?
Yeah.
That makes sense. You know what though? That's also, yes, ADHD, but from a mindset perspective, we talk about your senses, and when we work with athletes, it's like tap into something, what you're tasting, what you're seeing, what you're touching, and that is very grounding. So it was obviously grounding for you to do that. And I find that lots of really good athletes intuitively do something And
Yeah.
then they're like, yeah, that worked. So, I mean, how would you define mental toughness, would you say, if you had to define it?
That's a good question. I would say the ability to see the bigger picture over the present moment.
Oh, I like
It,
that.
I think a lot of times people are so quick to give up because they don't see the longevity and they don't see the reward at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. Like they're feeling the pain in the moment and they focus on that rather than like, okay, this pain, this current pain right now is what's going to give me the glory, weeks from now or months from now or years from now. Like being able to have that growth mindset and understanding like each day is, a penny in the bank. Like each day is 1% better and not having not craving that instant gratification, if that makes sense.
It does. In fact, when I watch and why I'm really drawn to your social media and what you do now, is you show growth mindset, right? You show failure, you show, like that little bit by little bit.
Mhm.
And we get to watch it. Obviously, you cut it down, but from like the start of something you're trying to then like, I don't know if I can do it. And just really what goes through your mind, and you bring
Yeah.
levity and fun to it. So I was super drawn to you from your just the way it's laid out and everything. I think it's cool how you bring a lot of good energy within like perception of failure, which is what
Yeah.
stops a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually why I started doing it. So
I guess tell the listeners what you do. Maybe they don't, and not everybody knows.
Yeah. So I graduated college. Well, COVID ended my career. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. Got into college coaching. Hated it. I was still able to tumble though. I hadn't trained all year. It's an athlete thing. It's like when you graduate, like I think you just have like a little bit of trauma and you're just like, I don't want to work out. I don't want to touch weight, or you're really into it. Like there's one or two. And I was the opposite. I was like, I don't want to touch weight. And I was in the gym every single day. So I was like, okay, I don't really care to work out after this. Like I'm tired. So, but then one day I was like really craving flipping. And it's just like a weird thing, but gymnasts know if you crave, like you just like crave to like be upside down. So I was like, let me just try it. And like I whipped out my full floor team tumbling passes, like all three in a row, back to back to back, perfectly.
Like random day, just
7 months off.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe I should be like capitalizing on this while I can, because it's so not normal to tumble after retiring. Like I was really one of the first to continue my career after college. Everyone else retires. You stop doing gymnastics altogether. It's not a sport you do like pick up basketball where you can just go play and like you don't really care and you don't have to train. It's like one of those things that you have to train like very, very frequently to be able to maintain your skill level. So I went home. I was actually coaching out in Utah and hated it. And then went and lived back at home, but I have a home gym that I was training at because I started getting into commercial work. So I was doing stunts and commercials where I just did gymnastics specifically, and like thought maybe I'd get into like movies and like TV shows and really like the stuff where you get hit by a car type stuff. Like I thought like, oh, like let me get into stunts, because if you actually look, I'm like all of UCLA gymnastics alum, there's like 10 of the best stunt women in the industry, all UCLA grads. And so I was
Crazy.
like, it's like my, Autobahn, just let me just hop on this ride and like it'll take me to movie making and whatever else. And so tried it for a little bit, got really badly hurt a lot. It was just really hard on my body and I've never been in pain that much. So I'm like, I kind of want longevity in my career. I kind of want to do stuff for me, not for other people. And I want to have my controllables. Like I want to be able to decide how many numbers I do. And when you're in stunts, you don't. They say, hey, you're going to do this again. Can you do it again? Can you do it again? Wait, we need to like get a different camera on you. Can you do it again? And it got to the point where like I did a commercial and I ended up tearing my Achilles on the job.
Oh,
and
I thought that was like I thought that stuff was like fake, like the stunt stuff. Like I thought like that, like I didn't know people were getting hurt.
oh yeah,
just not the actresses. Gracie
Yeah.
is just
Gracie, yeah, not the main people. Yeah.
oh yeah, and I was dressed as Martha Stewart, so
that's hilarious.
yeah. So that's kind of where I was like, how do I still do stunts but be my own boss? And so I was like, let me try to see if I can like build my brand and for me. And so that's how I got into social media. And then I was still training for commercials like while I was filming for social media. And that's how I was like, I needed an accountability buddy because I was training by myself all the time. So that's how I started filming training vlogs. And I realized that, especially in this day and age with social media being as like this giant highlight reel, I'm like, it's kind of sad that these young athletes are going to be watching these videos and think, oh, I should be getting this skill in 2 tries, or I should be good at this age because I see some girl in Germany doing this skill and she's younger than me. And I think it just like clicked for me that, well, one, if I ever have kids, I never want my kid to, expect perfection right off the jump. Like that's so toxic. So that's kind of what got me started on posting the fails.
Yeah, I love it.
I also was like, how do I make gymnastics relatable? Because that's where content thrives, is when it's relatable and you're kind of like a comfort creator to someone because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel accepted. And so that's why I started kind of showing the not so pretty parts and, training without makeup on and like doing stuff that not a lot of people would be, willing to do because I didn't care about myself. I wanted to do it for the young athletes that are watching and trying to do stuff that I do. And I mean, I obviously, because I'm older and I'm a lot more confident in my abilities, I get skills quicker, but still, I'm like, I'm not going to not show the mess ups. Like that's fake. It's not real. And I want these athletes to know, like, it's okay to mess up. And also it doesn't matter if you mess up, it's how you respond to the mess up. And that's why I keep it very light. I keep it very fun. And like, it helps me as an athlete. Like I've created now a habit of like reacting very positively to my mess ups because I just like laugh at myself, laugh it off, and then we like move on. And I think it's helped me a lot mentally without realizing it. And that wasn't my intention in the beginning, but now it's really cool. And I'm my own biggest cheerleader because I'm having to scream for myself and react to myself every training session. And yeah, it's been a really cool journey kind of discovering that very niche thing, but it's been very
that's incredible.
I think that's a skill though, to be able to like laugh and make fun of like a mess up.
It's important. And it is a skill. I agree with Owen when you were talking earlier about like it didn't show up until all the audience at UCLA came, right? And that's what we hear is I'm fine during the week, but then when it comes to performing and going on the court or going on the mat is when that fear wakes up. So you normalizing it for young athletes is really important, I think. Yeah, that can happen. And you have to practice it, whatever form, sports psychology, or not everybody, has a place to do that, but they can practice these techniques that you're talking about little by little. So it's cool that you provide that.
We always usually ask whoever's on or whoever we're hosting any like sports mantras, like anything that you'll say like repeatedly in your head before like a big meet or anything like that will kind of get you in the zone or no?
I did have I'm more of like a visual person, so I did have an album in my phone of all of my best skills and like me performing them at my best. And so I would watch those religiously before meets, and that was my ritual.
That's in one of the books that we wrote. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have a book for athletes, and it's called the highlight reel, and that's what we tell athletes to do. So that's awesome that you do it.
You feel joy that when you did it correctly, and you just know, like, okay, let me emulate that. Like, it just gets you really excited about it. I used to go like this because I grew up very religious. I'm Christian now, but I just always thought like it just calmed me down, and like writing a kind of cross across my chest. I just always said like cross across my chest, let God do the rest. And that just kind of like reminded me to like let my body, but also let God kind of just take the wheel and help me, trust myself. And then I don't know. I think I actually would pretend to be someone else when I went out on the floor for competitions, because I've always had, very like, I don't want to say low self-confidence, but I've always been a very nervous competitor. And I think emulating someone else's like badass like mentality and just having like that grit, I I would basically just like play a role, and I'm like, fake it till you make it. And then the second I would finish my routine, I was back to me. But I feel like I've kind of carried that with me with the social media as well, because there's a lot of times where it is hard sometimes to show up for yourself and show up on socials and like show up on the camera. And so there's a lot of times where it's like, I'll show up as Grace or I'll show up as Gracie Kramer. And I feel like I've kind of separated those two, especially when it comes to like, you know, being on a big stage or like doing something very scary. It's a lot easier, or like getting hate even. Like if Gracie Kramer gets hate, I'm not really tripping over it, because I'm just like, oh, well, that's Gracie getting hate. That's not Grace getting hate.
That's true. Yeah, cool.
So it is a little bit of like a double life type of thing, just to kind of help me remember, like at my core, like they know me for what I put out on socials, and they know me for what I put out on the floor when I was competing, but they don't know me. They didn't know me to my core. And I think that's a really important thing for really all athletes and all content creators and anyone that's really under the, you know, microscope of public eye and all of that. I think it's just like realizing like people know you for what you let them know. And I think that at the end of the day, like you only know yourself down to your very, you know, very core. And so kind of keeping those separate was really helpful for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, you know, you build confidence through skill development. And obviously you've done that from the physical side, but it's the mental side that matters when it comes to mental health, obviously. So cool what you do and how you model that for so many young athletes. We appreciate it. I also want to say, I know we had to reschedule this, and Owen and I really appreciate the work of firefighters and first responders in general. That is your boyfriend that does that. And so just want to give him a shout out. And yeah, because super cool, sending all of our love that direction. Does he give you any mindset, or do you see him go into these fires having a certain mindset that, you know, he would share? Yeah.
He's a different person too. Like I always, if he's at work, he'll call me every now and again. Or like if I call him, it's usually when he calls me, he's Griffin. But like when I call him and he's at work, he'll be like, hey, and I'm like, fighter Griffin right now, or boyfriend Griffin. Like you can tell there's such a shift. And like I've seen him at work before with his buddies and like his coworkers, and you know, it is interesting. Like you can definitely see the flip of a switch.
Mindset. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's intense. It's not.
Yeah, and he's very gentle and nurturing and sweet and kind, and like, I mean, when he's my boyfriend, but when he's on the job, like he has to be a little bit, he has to have a shell. And especially with seeing as much trauma as he does, like he's, you know, he's in the thick of it a lot of times with seeing as much as he does with his job. And all I can do is hope that like, you know, me being my light, fun, goofy side will bring that part out of him again. And like when he comes home, he can kind of just like turn off his fire side and be himself again, because yeah, it's a gnarly job. Like I've definitely seen.
Yeah, it's insane. And we just want him to know Owen's in Florence and I'm in Chicago, but a lot of people are sending their love your way. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Yeah, you've been incredible. I think you gave some amazing tips to young athletes. Owen, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's all. Thanks for hopping on. We were fired up to have you.
We're so fired up to have you. So please go check her out. What's your handles, Gracie?
Gracie.Kramer is my Instagram. And then Gracie Kramer 14 is Gracie Kramer 8 is my TikTok. And Gracie Kramer 14 is my YouTube.
We'll add it to the podcast on the bottom. I know. You're like, what is it, Kate? Why'd you ask me this? So yes, please join us next time for another amazing athlete like Gracie to talk about the mental side of the game. Again, also in between, check us out at puresportsmindset.com and on our Instagram at puresportsmindset. So thanks again, Gracie. And we look forward to following you and supporting you.
All right. Thank you so much.